Tell me when. Okay. What's going on, Hosanna City? You guys know me, I'm D. Pastor Josh asked me to tell you a little bit about my testimony, about the things that have happened to me, where I've come from, and where God has brought me and how God has brought me. So I guess we'll start from the very beginning. I was born in a black gangster neighborhood, Inglewood, California, right down the street from the Forum. It's a crazy place. And when I was about, super young, my parents got us out of that neighborhood. They brought all 7 of us to a Mexican gang neighborhood 2 cities down called Lawndale. And I have 4 real brothers and sisters, and I have 3 half brothers and sisters. My dad was married before, and with his first wife, he had 3 kids. So they came to live with us when I was 3 or 4 years old. So they've been there almost the whole time. So anyway, we got to Lawndale, and Lawndale's, like I said, a Mexican gang neighborhood. So from before kindergarten, I was already running around with the gangsters from Lawndale. Everybody in that day, you just played outside until it got dark, and that's what we did. We were poor, and we just go outside and just cause havoc, even as super young kids. And at 12, my dad died and left us there by ourselves. So it wasn't long after that I was just into everything, just causing all kinds of problems, stealing, doing drugs. I had already started doing drugs. By 11 years old, I started smoking weed. Then I don't know what happened, but there was a rich white guy that used to come into our neighborhood, Mr. Kennelly. He was from the beach, and he would pick up a bunch of ghetto kids and take us to Manhattan Beach on a Wednesday night. We called the Boys and Girls Club, and he would buy us ice cream if we would go. And there was a bunch of cute beach girls there, so all of us would get in the van and go with him just to get ice cream and to look at these girls. But somewhere in those Wednesday night groups, I really surrendered my life to Christ. I said, yeah, I didn't think it was going to happen, and I didn't plan on it happening, but I accepted Christ. And I kept going to Boys and Girls Club about 4 months after I accepted Christ, and by the time I was 13, I was back in the world, back on the streets. So my mother was raising 8 bad kids at the time. So by 13, I was back on dope. At 18, I overdosed, literally in the alley, dying. And I cried out to God if He would not let me die there. And God was faithful, and He restored me. It took about 6 months to restore my mind. From an overdose, it does weird things to your head. It's more than just a physical thing. It does something to your mind. So anyway, it took about 6 months, and I went to church faithfully that whole 6 months, and God just was working on me and healing my life and healing my mind. And as soon as God completely healed me, I spit in His face, and I ran into the world again, and I got strung out on crack. And by 23, I was a hardcore crack addict. And I don't know how many times I overdosed on crack, but a ton. And at 23, I cried out to God again. I went to a concert, a heavy metal concert, and Stryper happened to open up. I didn't even know who Stryper was, but they sang a song, and it said that you died for me and I'll live for you. And at that point, that song cut me to my heart that night. I was all high, and I was high and drunk, and the words cut me anyway. And the next day I went to church, and I re-surrendered my life for the second time, and for the third time, 12, 18, and 23. And that time I just started walking with Christ for over a year before I started going to Bible college. And then God opened the door for me to go to Bible college, and in Bible college they started telling me that I was going to be a pastor, which is something I had heard when I was 18. My aunt had came up, and a couple of people had confirmed it, and I just said, there's no way I'm going to be a pastor. That's not what I want to do, and that's not what I want to be. What I wanted to be was the toughest, coolest guy that had ever lived. So that's what I was striving to be. Yeah, and it seemed like it was a thing that I was super good at. There was nobody I couldn't scam on. There was hardly anybody that ever met me that didn't want to be me, except me. I don't even know why I did most of the things I did. I wasn't happy there, and I just didn't know anything else to do. So I just continued to do them, and I just continued to do them, and I just continued to do them. So anyway, Bible college at 23, and about halfway through Bible college, I dropped out and spit in God's face once again, and just said, that's not what I want to do, and that's not who I am, and this is who I am. And so from 23 to 40, God just kind of took his hands off me and said, okay, cool. You want to be this guy, go ahead and be this guy. You want to run wild, go ahead and run wild. And I ran wild, not a little bit wild. I have 5 kids from 2 different people, and during that time I was just more than a horrible person. Yeah, I don't know how many people I slept with and how many people I hurt, but I hurt so many people with no care of nothing. Yeah, I was just completely out of control, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd feel horrible about life, but I would just go through it anyway, thinking that if I just had the right formula, if I had the right girl and the right amount of drugs and the right amount of whatever it was, that my life would be okay. And I held on to that lie for 20 plus years, that I just didn't have the right mixture of whatever it was. And at 40, God said, I heard God clearly. He gave me the ability to write. He gave me the gift to write, and I wrote a couple books. And he said to me, he said, do you want to play a game the rest of your life, or do you want to live a life? And I already knew the answer to it. I completely was tired of playing games, and I wanted to look back at the end of my life and say, I actually had lived some part of that life instead of just only have played a game. And I knew he was directly speaking to me, and he told me that if I would purpose in my heart to hang on to him and to hang on to that purpose, the purpose of not playing that game no more, that he would change my life. And it took about the first 3.5 years, from 40 to 44, I fought with God every day. I went to church, and I had semi-surrendered, but not completely, and I fought with God every day about everything, that he didn't know what he was doing, and my life sucked, and my wife was with somebody else, and I had thrown her out of the house before this, and I had one of my 5 children with me only, and I fought with God every day about everything, just about where my life was, who I was, what was going on, and how could he allow my life to be this life after I had quit sleeping around, and after I quit doing drugs, and after I'd quit all these things that I actually had not stopped, that he had given me the ability to. It was nothing that I had done, but I was feeling so sorry for myself that I'm a good person now, and I don't do any of these things, and my life is still sucky. And in that process, he gave me the ability to cling to him and just to not let go, because I knew if I let go that I would be that same person that I always was. That I'd wake up the next day next to somebody that I didn't really know, that I didn't really care about, that I didn't want in my bed. Or that I would wake up and go straight to the bathroom and smoke some speed, or crack a beer, or whatever it would be. So I knew that I could not live that life one more day. So I just hung on to God, even though my life sucked, and I was just feeling sorry for myself and hated everything, hated most everybody. But I just hung on anyway, just hung on, knowing that God had put that in my mind, that if I would hang on, that something would change. And about 3.5 years into it, something changed. He said, you've paid for 3.5 years for the things that you sowed into for 20 plus years. And now I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you have some joy in your life. And that's exactly what he did. After 3.5, 4 years, he just started opening doors of ministry for me. And at first he said, start a Tuesday morning Bible study. And I said, I'm not going to start a Tuesday morning Bible study. Everybody's at work on Tuesday morning. There's no reason for me to. And he said, I didn't ask you if you thought there was a reason. I asked you to be faithful and to do it. So I started it, and before I knew it, man, within a few months, there was 20 or 30 guys that would come on a Tuesday morning and be part of that. And I didn't know that he was leading me to the promise that he had given me at 18 to be a pastor. I thought that I was going to write and maybe go from church to church and just preach and teach all over the place and not be at a home church and not be none of those things, not be an actual pastor, even though he had told me 25 years earlier that that's what I was going to be. I thought that I'd thrown all that away, and thought that he'd actually given the gift to my little brother. My little brother became a pastor at 20, and I thought that he had used that gift that I was supposed to be mine, that it was his now. And I went to Bible college, and one of my professors said that God never takes back a gift, that once he's given you something, it's forever. And if God told you 20 years ago you were going to be a pastor, you are going to be a pastor. So it restored that. And, it restored that want. I had even given up the want to be a pastor or anything. I just wanted to do whatever God had wanted me to do. So I was just trying to be faithful with anything that he gave me to do. He gave me that Tuesday morning Bible study, and then within 6 months he said, why don't you write a discipleship package? And the church I was attending needed a discipleship class. So he let me sit down. It took about 4 months to write, and I wrote a package called A Man in His Word. It's a semi-deep discipleship class for men. And they said, why don't you teach it? I wrote it, and I didn't think I was going to teach it. I thought somebody else was going to teach it, but as God turned out, he said, no, I want you to teach it. So I taught it, and it ran at JS for a couple years. And after that, about 6 months after that, they said, since you wrote that, we need a new believers class. Will you write a package for that? And God allowed me to write the package for that. And little by little, God just restored and gave me a purpose that I never had before. When I was living, I don't even know exactly why I did the things I did when I was in the world or what they were about. I just did them because it was something that I did. It was what I did the day before, so it's what I did the day after. It's what I did the day after, so it's what I did the next day. It wasn't because it was a goal, or it was there was a purpose behind it, or I knew something was amazing was going to happen. I just did it because it's what I knew to do. Yeah, I didn't know anything different, and I continued to do it forever. And I don't know if you're caught in any of that stuff, if you're caught in believing that the world is going to give you something that is going to make you happy, or is going to do something for your life that's going to make you feel complete, you're living in a fantasy. The thing is that I did it for 20 plus years, and when I finally surrendered to God, I wasn't on the bottom. I wasn't in prison. I wasn't dying from AIDS. I wasn't riddled with needle marks. None of those things. I was the king of my neighborhood. They called me King Drake, KD. Whatchamacallit. I was on top of the game, and I was so empty. And I think that's what God allowed me to see. That if you who believe you're on top of the game have nothing, how are all the people that are underneath you feeling? The people that don't have hardly anything, even in an evil game. And I don't know, I guess I could see the emptiness in all of it. Just that, and there was one other thing God kept putting on my heart. He kept putting on my heart, dude, I want to be a 65-year-old man at a bar trying to scam on girls. And I really didn't want to be a 65-year-old man at a bar trying to scam on girls. I couldn't think of anything more hideous in my heart than that. That was part of the thing he let me hang on to, that I just didn't want that life no more. The other things that God restored to me, I moved to Yucca Valley from Los Angeles, and I left my whole family except for my oldest daughter. I took her with me. And we got to Yucca 9 years ago, and just the two of us, and I was completely lost because even when I was in the world, I'd spent all my time with my kids. My kids lived with me the whole time, and I was never away from them. So I was part of the heart, what was breaking my heart was not having my kids. And I started praying about it, and within 3 years, God restored second one of my kids. He brought my youngest son up, Ryan, and I kept praying. And the following year, he brought my 18-year-old, he brought Sky up, and then the following year, he brought Summer up. So in a 3-year process, he restored every one of my children except for my oldest, who had already moved out. He restored all my children to me. He not only had opened up ministries to me, he restored my life. God says he give you beauty for ashes, and he most definitely gave me beauty for ashes. And then over this last year, my best friend, who I hadn't talked to maybe twice in 9 years, he restored that. He restored that friendship. He healed that friendship, and that's the kind of God we serve. A God who is a God of restoration, a God who is a perfect just amazing God who wants what's best for you. John 10:10 says that I came to give you life and life more abundantly, and God cannot lie. And God has given me the most abundant life, just an amazing life. Yeah. 3 months ago, Josh announced me as the youth pastor here. Whatchamacallit, and I don't know what God has in the future, but I can't wait to see whatever it is, because I know it's going to be amazing. And thank God for that every day. And I thank God for being part of this family. Tell me what else you need. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do one at a time. Let's do one at a time. Let's go to the one you just said. Say it again. Okay. Okay. When I was 23, I went to Bible college, and I thought I was going to be a pastor. And I went for a long time, and I don't know what happened, but I rejected that. I just said that's not what I want to be, and that's not who I want to be, and that's not the thing I wanted to do. And I'd already spit in God's face at 12, the first time I got saved, and I had re-spit in his face at 18, and at 23, the third time I was in open rebellion against God. I just completely turned my back on him and said, the streets are more important to me than you. And in the third time of turning my back on God, he kind of released his hands from me. A lot of crazy, weird things happened at that time, but one of the craziest things is that before that, I couldn't get high the way that everybody else in my neighborhood could get high. All the people that I was hanging out with, we were running in a gang at the time, and I was actually the leader of a gang at the time. And all of them guys could party for days on top of days on top of days, and I could never do that. What happened is I'd get high for a day or two, and it would just make me sick. And after the third time of openly rebelling against God and just falling back in the world, I found out that I could stay high for as many days as they could. That I could stay high for 7 days, or I could stay without it tearing me up. So I knew that God had allowed me to say, okay, you want to do that so bad, fool, go ahead and do that. Before it was a blessing that he was holding his hand on me and not allowing me just to run completely crazy. At that time, I started building my second Harley, and I had such blackness in my heart about the whole thing. I was bitter about raising 5 kids and about spending every cent, working 3 jobs and spending every cent to pay for rent and to pay for food and to pay for clothes and to pay for all those things. That once I started building the bike, I didn't care. I didn't care about anything. All I said was that no matter what, I'm going to finish this bike. If it kills me, if it drags me to hell, I'm going to build this bike. And that's what I did. God had allowed me completely to take my evilness to a different level, to a deeper, darker level, to where I just was out of control. Every once in a while, like once every couple of years, my cousin, who was a Christian, would come over and say, God's talking to me about you. God's been telling me to come talk to you and to tell you to come back. And every time he'd come, I would just be like, yeah, kick rocks, Lane. I'm not going nowhere. Yeah, I believe in God. I believe there's a God. I know there's a God, but I wasn't living for God. So anyway, as a rebellion rolled on, the third time of openly rebelling against God, I seen a lot more darkness, and I seen a lot more things that I know for a fact that looking back, that God had his hands on me before, was protecting me. Every one of the people that I grew up with ended up in prison. I'm the only one that didn't. A couple of them are in prison for murder. A couple of them are doing life. A couple of them have been murdered. But he never even allowed me to go to prison. I've been to jail a few times, but never to prison. Whatchamacallit, just so many things he held his hand on me against. Just didn't let those things happen to me. But the third run in the world was dark and ugly and just empty. Trying to think how that relates, Jay. And well, it just relates, like I just said, it allowed me to get high forever. Yeah, all the things that I knew that God was holding on me before that, we used to be so pissed about him not letting me stay high for days. Yeah, that was all changed. That's the only things I can really think of, Jay. The dark stuff. You know, the craziest thing is, Jay, God held his hand on my life the whole time. You know, I've had guns pulled on me, I've had people shoot at me, I've had all those things. I've never been shot, I've never been stabbed. Yeah, God just held his hand on me to all that nonsense. You know, God knew that in the year 40 I really was going to surrender, even though I didn't know. You know, God knew. God knew what he could use and what he, you know, the things that he allowed happen to me were horrible, but they weren't that horrible. The things that he allowed, you know what I'm saying? The life that he allowed this to be, now can glorify him with it. But he didn't let crazy things happen to me, because I believe that had he allowed me to go to prison, that I would have been a shot caller in prison. Then I would have been in prison for the rest of my life. Or had he allowed me to say yes when Londell said, you'll be the first white dude to be in this gang. It's a Mexican gang that I grew up with. We're going to jump you in. It's an honor. You'll be the first white guy in this gang. Had he allowed me to say yes, I would have been a murderer. And he didn't allow those things to happen. Tell me the second one, and I will come back to that, and I'll think about it. Yes. No, it's true. Yes. No, amen. Maybe I need to speak on it more. Maybe I didn't speak on it clearly enough. That period of time was when, at 40, when I knew that I really was going to surrender. When I really knew that God was working on me. That period of time that you're talking about is, I told you, the darkest time of my life at that point. Now it's become my bright spot. But the 3.5 years that I only had Kelsey up here, every day was a struggle. Every day was a battle. Every day was darkness. Every day was sadness in my heart. Yeah, we talked about some of that. But that's... And I like that. Here's the spin on what you put on. We have an enemy there. He's real. That's right. You're redeeming every one of your struggles, which is beautiful. And that's exactly what I taught last week. Every one of your struggles, every one of your sins, it's clear that you've already given yourself to God and you see the hope and the redemption. Most of these people have. That's right. No. No, amen. It's there. Okay, whatchamacallit. So anyway, at 40, I heard God speaking to me. Not a voice, but I heard God speaking to me, and God was saying, do you want to live the rest of your life playing a game, or do you want to live a real life? Do you want to look back at the end of your life and at least be able to say that the last 30 years, the last 40 years of my life, I was really alive and I was really living, not playing a game? And I knew that that's exactly what I wanted. I had already thrown my wife out of the house the year before that, and she had a boyfriend, and at that point, I truly grabbed a hold of God. And at that point, he moved me from LA, from living at the beach. I lived about 1.5 miles from the beach in Redondo in a big 2-story, 4-bedroom house. I had 3 jobs down there, and I was doing, I guess, what I thought was okay, even though I was addicted to a bunch of stuff, and my whole life was just about nonsense. God had taken the drugs away, and God had taken the want to sleep with everybody away, and taken those things away. But when I left LA, I only had one of my 5 children. And when I got to Yucca Valley, I was there with just one of them. And for 3 years, I was there with just one of them. And it was the darkest time of my life. I would get up in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. God blessed me with a job like almost instantly. He gave me a job at Cove Electric. I got up to Yucca, and within 2 weeks I went to a men's retreat with Calvary Chapel there, and one of the guys said that my company's hiring, Cove Electric's hiring, and I went and got a job there. So I had a good job almost instantly, but I was in such sorrow and such deep darkness that what I would do is I would get up at 3 in the morning, I would go to work, and then I would get home around 3 in the afternoon, and I'd go straight into my bedroom, and I would close the doors and turn the lights off, and I wouldn't eat dinner, I'd just go to sleep. And I would do this day after day after day after day, just in a battle, with my heart and with my mind, and the enemy telling me that all I had to do was pick up the phone and call any of the 500 girls' phone numbers that I had in my phone book, and I would feel better. And I knew it was true. I knew that I would feel better for a day, or for a week, or for a month, until I couldn't stand the person that was sleeping next to me. And on the other hand, I heard God telling me, if I would just hang on, if I would just do the right thing, if I would just hang on, that He would restore my life. So this went on for month after month after month after month. It went on for 3 years. The enemy telling me every day, all you need to do is go get high or go get drunk, and you won't think about this no more. It won't be an issue no more. If you would just call somebody and get laid, you'll feel happy again. You'll be okay for a moment. And I knew that I would feel happy for a second, until I was back in the same exact boat, having to make up the ground that God had already made up for me, going backwards instead of the forward that I wanted to go, that I needed to go. So He had given me a purpose in my heart. He had given me something to hang on to, and that the thing that He had given me to hang on to was that I had true hope that my life would be a different life, that I wouldn't be 65 years old trying to scam on girls in bars, trying to get high, whatever I thought of as the most hideous thing I could think of. He allowed me to hang on to that. So even when I was in the darkest times and the enemy was telling me, oh, you need to just come back, because you remember you had moments of happiness, you had moments of feeling okay. You know, if you had a girlfriend right now, you wouldn't be lonely. I was so lonely for 3 years. I went from 5 kids and from a wife and 50 girlfriends to no girlfriends, no wife, and 1 kid. And I knew that if I would just surrender to what the enemy was telling me, that I would feel better for a minute. But I knew that if I did surrender, that I would be maybe never coming back to God again. Maybe in the 4th open rebellion against God, that I would just be sealing my fate to hell. So I clung to the fact that I wasn't going to take a chance, whether it was that or not. And maybe God would have restored me even again, I don't know. But I know that He gave me the purpose in my heart to hang on to it, and I allowed Him to let me hang on to it.